name is Jason Felts. I am the CEO of Virgin Produce, which is the film arm of the Virgin Group. The Virgin Group, owned and founded by Richard Branson in the 70s. He started in the music space, has always been, had an affinity for content, starting with music, and then moved into aviation and mobile and spaceships and all that great stuff. I run that entertainment arm, which is focused on making 3 to 5 movies a year. They're big commercial motion pictures, TV shows, and then all the content that lives on board, the planes, the hotels, the mobile phones, all that great stuff. I started out as an independent, sorry about that. I started out as an independent producer, and about 6 years ago took over my company got bought by Virgin, and I took over the entertainment assets of Virgin. So prior to making Hollywood movies, 3 movies a year, I was making movies with budgets anywhere from $20,000 to $2 million, $3 million. So started very small, and have just been fortunate enough to sort of move my way up through that process. But if I didn't have that foundation, that education of learning how to make a movie that had maybe a $10,000, $25,000 budget, I'd never be able to sort of have that the ability to then go take a little bit more money.
So my name's Steve Gurley. I started out really young as a PA. I was only 15 and started working on commercials and short corporate stuff back in Alabama, where I grew up. I worked in Atlanta, Alabama, Nashville, and got involved into media and marketing, but always had a passion for film and television. So as that progressed and education progressed as well, I did start working on a couple pictures, and I've worked on a few films, helped raise money for a few films, helped co-produce a couple films. But I know more of like what not to do, because while some projects that I've been involved with have made money, many of them have not, because that's what it takes to get to a point where you are making money making movies. I realized that I'm married and I've got to take finances seriously. So I realized that marketing and media is where I can make most of my money, even if it's marketing and media for features or entertainment productions. But I still have a passion for film, and I'll probably make a couple more films in my day, and I'm thankful that I know a lot about what not to do in the film business.
So first of all, I'm going to throw up a slide right now that's going to look a little daunting, but I want to throw it up so everybody has a little bit of a context into how big Hollywood movies get made. And as you can see, it's very intricate. It's not just I have an idea, let me get a director, let me get a star, let me throw some money into it, let me make it, right? This is a process which they call the film life cycle, and it's very intricate. But every product starts, every movie, a movie is a product or an asset, right? And it all starts with the development process. It's a shower thought, it's an idea, it's a script. It moves into the process where it's written either by you or by somebody else, and it may or may not be based on underlying IP. So it may be based on a book or based on a comic book, or there's some rights that have been acquired or optioned. And then everybody always has sort of that talent in mind, right? So like, oh, this would be a great role for George Clooney and Jennifer Lawrence or whatever it might be. So that's sort of the development process. That's a long process, and that process, typically you as the content originator in your head or the producer, you're the one funding that, right? So it's a lot of your own sweat equity. Then it moves into a packaging process where you have to go out to the agencies and you have to try and get talent's attention to attach that talent to the project. So the director or the star. And you move into a process where you're trying to pre-sell that movie. So you're taking your packaged product now, which was a script that you started with. You've got your director and your star, and then you go and pre-sell it. So you pre-sell it to studios internationally and domestically. From that process, you move into a pre-production. This gets a little more intricate. You move into a pre-production process where you hire a line producer. That's that third block behind me, where you hire a line producer. That line producer is basically the accountant for the movie. They're the person that's responsible for breaking down the entire script. Okay, we've got 55 scenes. We're going to do a beach scene. We're going to do a scene inside. We're going to do a scene on top of a mountain, and they break that down to determine how the budget is going to be stretched. From there, you determine where you're going to shoot and does that territory that you're going to shoot in have a tax incentive. So a lot of places have tax incentives. Puerto Rico's 40%, Australia's 40%. Cayman's working on having a tax incentive, but which is going to be a process in itself, as everybody knows. From there, then the banks do a comp analysis. They look at your movie, they look at the concept of your movie, they say what is it similar to, and they comp out what the box office revenue for that movie is based on the thematics of your movie. From there, you move into production, right? And this all seems like it's very fast, but it's not. It's a very slow process. You move into production, and every week that line producer is doing sort of a weekly cost analysis to make sure you're staying on budget and that the director's not ordering an extra crane to shoot a shot when he could use a ladder, for lack of a better example. On the creative side, there's what's called creative dailies, and that's where the producer or the director finishes his shots for the week, and those creative dailies go back to the producer and the financier to watch those dailies to say, okay, this is matching up with the script, right? From there, you continue through post. You continue into post production. That's all the editing, any special effects, and then that's when market research screenings come out. So there's a great degree of process that goes into determining what that poster is going to look like, what that trailer is going to look like. And you're a marketing guy, you get it better than anyone in sort of the process, but it's all done through market research. From there, you move into distribution, where you license that finished film to a domestic distributor in the U.S. So that's Warner Brothers, Universal, or some of the smaller ones like Lionsgate, Open Road, whatever it might be, and then international. So there's different international distributors than there are domestically in the U.S. So, for instance, one of the bigger ones in Australia is called Village Roadshow. One of the bigger ones in Canada is called E1. And then after the initial distribution, which is exhibition, which is the movie theaters, which is a lot of people see the movies in, it moves into the other what they call windows. So the other windows from there are the ones that are increasingly challenging that theater window, which are the pay TV window, which is Netflix, and home entertainment, which is the DVD. From there, this is the very end, that you get what is determined as the film ultimate. So the value of a film is determined over a 10-year period. That's called the film ultimate. And that's how financiers of big movies, studios, independent financiers determine how much money, what their ROI is going to be on that movie. So they take the comps of movies like it, they take the stars, they take the value of what it sold for in the international territories, and that's where the sort of residual and sort of mailbox money comes into play, and that's estimated. Again, it's always estimated. Financing films is extremely risky, and that's the life cycle of a Hollywood movie. Whether you're trying to raise $50,000 to make your movie, you're trying to raise $20 million to make your movie. To be educated on it is the most important thing. And it's taken me a long time to get educated. I'm still getting educated, and I have a CFO that beats me over the head every week to educate me. But that's how a big Hollywood movie gets made. So now let's talk about the steps to get there. Right? You gotta, prior to making these movies, I was borrowing, stealing from every friend, parent, uncle, aunt, and my savings account that I could ever beg, borrow, and steal from. Because when you're passionate about a piece of content, whether it be a script or a comic book or a buddy's idea, you're passionate about it and you want to make it. And you know a buddy who's got a camera, and you know somebody who's got an editing bay, and you know somebody who is a music composer or whatever it might be. So you think you can pull together a film, and you can pull together a film. But it's just about sort of what are those steps. So I know you have pulled together some films over the years. You described them in the coffee shop earlier as smaller films, and I made those same films, and I would go back and make those films because they're so much more fun. But
Maybe, kind of.
I think talking about your experience and sort of the things you've pulled together may be useful too, to get there.
The first film. I mean, so. And by the way, we don't know each other very well, so we're learning about each other here today. So did you do crew stuff as well, or just from the producing side?
Yeah, so I started as a PA out of school. I grew up in Texas and moved to California. Big dreams, big eyes, wide open, but just completely naive to the business, right? And so I started fetching coffee, as you do, right? And then just the thing that I think helped move me along is I asked questions of everybody,
Right.
right? I think educating yourself is, and I would just bug the hell out of everyone. And I would just say, "Well, how's that done? How's that done? How's that done?" And I was never satisfied with the answer. I always wanted to know more because I felt like people were kind of holding back from telling me.
Right.
They didn't want to tell me like the ingredients, and how they were doing it, whether threatened or whatever. But I think asking questions. So I started doing that, and then I moved into working on the crew. I wanted to learn everything. I wanted to learn how to hold a camera. I wanted to learn how to order a lighting package and what a lighting package is, because it's all, as you know, it's very intricate. And it's a science, the architecture of a film. So I wanted to like work in every single department that I could work in, and then ultimately I realized I didn't want to do any of that. I didn't want to carry cable. I didn't want to carry cameras. I didn't want to do lighting. Part of that's because I'm scrawny and I didn't want to carry all that crap. The other part is because I was really fascinated with the business of it all. I was like, okay, how's this thing going to make money? Like I want to make money, right? And so that's what kind of drove
That's
me.
not a typical filmmaker, by the way. One that
No,
wants to make money.
exactly.
Most people
Exactly.
just want to see their script come to life.
Exactly, but every great filmmaker and every great visionary needs a producer who can say, "Okay, let's
Absolutely.
monetize this thing."
Absolutely.
Right? So I realized I wasn't the creative guy. I realized I was the architecture guy, but I needed somebody to figure out what color paint and what color carpet and where the windows should go. So using your analogy earlier about building a house,
Absolutely. With construction, a lot of people just think about, everyone has their dream home, right? So a lot of producers, I feel, or independent filmmakers have their dream movie, but it's not just like you have your dream house. But if you have limited resources, if you try and build that dream house with limited resources, not the right people and experience on board, not the right money on board, your dream house is going to be a shack and it's not going to get approved. It's not going to be livable. And I feel that a lot of people do that with films, is that they try, they have this fascination with that big dream home where they could have written to their budget, written to their resources, and produced a very good film within that. A lot of my experience early on was also like you as a PA. I started out with commercials. So my uncle's a cinematographer, and I spent a lot of time on national commercial sets, Budweiser, Hooters, Delta thing, and I would just shadow all the departments.
That's a great way to learn.
To really learn what all the departments were about. And I feel to be a producer or even director, it's important. Like even if you just volunteer and you're not getting paid to work on a short or a feature, just to get in these departments so that you can understand the inner workings of how a production gets done, and that will help you be a little bit more patient and understanding when you go to produce a film and you have all these needs from the different departments.
It's also a good way to figure out like what you're actually passionate about, right? 'Cause
Absolutely.
you think you may want to be a producer, but you may realize that you're actually a little bit more creative and your sensibilities are more inclined to being a director, right? You're more of a visionary. You think you may want to, be a camera operator, but you kind of get into it and you're like, no, actually, I'm a closet chef. I want to run
Right.
catering.
Yeah, and
I want to
craft
run catering.
service.
This looks awesome, right? Like so,
Absolutely.
you realize I think there's 35 different sort of main roles on a film set, and there's about 7 different main departments. And you don't realize how much there is, how many opportunity and what it takes to make a movie.
Until you're on your first call sheet and you're like, holy
That's
crap,
a lot
that's
of
a
people on
lot
this.
of people.
Yeah,
and then
it's
you don't
huge.
even meet half
You don't
of
meet
them.
half of them. So
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I think I think it's really, as most people who know me on the island here, I'm a huge supporter of entrepreneurs and the arts in general. I set up the film commission with the government here in 2009, which Badir and I actually both serve on the board of, which is great. And its sole focus is the progression of filming in Cayman. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and but we're truly passionate about it. And so I'm excited about Poinciana, and I think that anything that can sort of move the arts forward in this country is a good thing. And I think now we just want to kind of open it up. I know we have a small room in here, but anybody that has any questions, no matter how simple or small or whatever, I'd love to address them, and I know you would too. So that's probably the best thing. You guys don't want to hear us keep on rambling on, but
Where does the finance come for the movies that you're producing?
Sure. So the financing comes in a variety of ways. Let's, for instance, say the budget of the movie's $25 million. Everybody envisions that one guy comes in and writes a check for $25 million, and that's so far from the truth. The guy who would ever come in and write a check for $25 million is a fool, right? You don't do that, because that is not risk mitigating in any form or fashion. So the way that we structure our movies at Virgin is very complex. So we pre-sell certain territories. So maybe we sell a little bit to Australia. We sell the Australian rights. We sell the South African rights. We sell the Italy rights. We sell the France rights. That gives us, maybe we pre-sell half of the movie, right? So now it's called a $20 million budget. Now we're at $10 million, right? Because we've pre-sold half the movie. Then we go to a bank and we can bank those contracts, right? Because we don't get that money from them until after we've delivered the film to them. But those are bankable contracts for banks that will lend against those contracts, those distributor contracts, because they're Class A distributors. They're Warner Brothers or Lionsgate, whatever they are. So that leaves us with a $10 million gap, right? Then we choose, where are we going to shoot? We want to shoot in a tax-friendly place. So we want to shoot in Puerto Rico. They have a 50% tax rebate. They don't. They have 40 or whatever. But just for sake of numbers, it's 50% tax incentive, tax rebate. So that marks us down to $5 million. So we have a $5 million gap, right? Because we're shooting in Puerto Rico, we've pre-sold the rights. There's a lot of other there's a lot of other nuances to it. But say, for instance, we've got $5 million left in this $20 million budget. Then we go to a mezzanine financer or a financier, and they either fund half the movie with us or they fund the whole thing. So I'm starting to put it into, I'm starting to set up SPVs in the Cayman Islands for all of these movies. So my IP is owned out of the Cayman Islands, and it's protected down here, which I want to educate the country a little bit more on, because I think that's important. I want to educate Hollywood a little bit more on that.
As a company or a partnership?
So every movie is an SPV.
Company or partnership?
Yep. It's a company, LLC. Yep.
Why do you use a company?
We use a company for a variety of reasons. So all the risk for the specific film sits inside of an SPV versus Virgin Corporate, and everybody does this. Yeah. Even the smallest.
But you could do that in a partnership as well.
You could do it in a partnership. Yeah. Yep. You could do it in a partnership.
And it's not an LLC. It'll be an LTD company.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
You can do an LLC from next month.
Or an LLP. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
20 years ago, a lot of films were financed through Cayman Limited Partnerships. They're not anymore.
Right.
Do you know if that was because there were tax breaks that changed that moved that work away?
I don't know if it's necessarily tax breaks, because I don't think Cayman's ever had an incentive to.
No. Tax breaks elsewhere. So, for example, within the United States.
Quite possibly. Yeah, quite possibly. I think that for us, Virgin is a UK company, right? And so is a UK brand. This is obviously a British territory, and so for us, it makes a lot of sense, right? You guys have incredible IP protection laws down here to house our library, so it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for everybody, right? Village Roadshow is an Australian-based company, right? So it makes sense for some companies. It doesn't make sense for others. I can only speak on behalf of what we do and why we do it. I'm not savvy enough on the industry on the whole of why other people don't choose Cayman as the territory where they want to sort of financially base their business.
Yeah, because the reason I'm a partner at a law firm here,
okay.
And Badir's
which one? Sorry,
Walkers.
Okay.
Badir's spoken to me about this. The guys that run the Cayman Film Festival have spoken to me about this, and I've always said to them that the big thing you're missing here in Cayman is that the one thing we're very good at is amalgamating capital here.
Yeah, absolutely.
We lead the world in hedge funds, private equity funds.
Absolutely.
Why aren't more amalgamation of capital structures being formed in Cayman, for example, to finance big movie projects?
There is a very significant fund down here that you probably don't know about. No, there's a fund that's actually it's all the money. So, as you probably well know, and as you know, there's China is a lot of entertainment is being funded out of China right now. A lot of everything's being funded out of China. But most recently, last week, Universal just announced a $500 million deal with a company called Perfect World, which is a China-based company. I think it goes back to education, right? I think that Hollywood and media investors need to be educated on Cayman as a territory, and I think it all goes to sort of pro Cayman PR too, right?
Sure, exactly.
Which is definitely something that I focus on, because I have an affinity for the country. For me, every time I hear someone go, refer to Cayman and say something like, the firm, I'm like, no, it's not the firm, right? And so it's all education. It's all education. I think people just aren't educated, and it requires smart, savvy people who can get out there and spread the word.
The way you talk about financing, it seems almost a private industry financing function. Is there much crowdfunding for big movies that where you go out and sell, for example, interests in a fund structure like a hedge fund or a private equity fund for people to participate in movies?
I'm not seeing a lot of crowdfunding in big commercial motion pictures. I see it a lot in the documentary space, that sort of thing. I don't see it in big features.
Kickstarter knocks up like 3 or 4 million, but you're not.
Yeah.
And that's only for celebrities attached.
Yeah, and the problem is celebrities don't want their names attached to a crowdfunding thing because it's very risky, right? It's like, what if you don't raise all the money? You're using my name. It's a very risky proposition because talent have to be very careful about their own individual brand, right?
Well, probably crowdfunding was a bad word. I meant. Is there any reason why? I mean,
like club funding is probably what you're saying. So
yeah,
it's like you put in a little bit, I put in a little bit, you put in everybody's sort of
Yeah.
friends and family.
And
right?
this is one of the best locations in the world to amalgamate capital. So big money is required to make these big movies. How can we attract more of that to come to Cayman and be part of what we do here?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Again, it goes to education. And I think it's also about building events. And I think I want to talk to Badir a little bit more about it too. It's about building events. I think that, for instance, building events that will attract people down here that are interested in this space, right? Film finance gets a bad rap. It gets a bad rap because there's a lot of bad characters that have done things the wrong way or lost a lot of money for a lot of people, right? And so I think that to the extent that education is done in a way where you're attracting the right audience, and then have the right professionals in the room to then do that, right? So lawyers, asset managers, to build an infrastructure and build some architecture, right, to do it, I think it would be welcomed, right? I know several high net worth individuals that are major media investors that are going to be down here this week as my guest with Richard Branson for CASE, for the Cayman Alternative Investment Summit, right? And so to the extent there was something, another door I could bring them into, right, that'd be great, but there isn't. So I think attracting them is not the hard part. It's about getting an architecture in place, and then they will come.
Well, the architecture is very, very simple. It's tried and tested. We've been using it for years. So I'd love to meet some of these people and find a way we can add that to what Cayman can offer. Not need to have films made here, but to finance them.
And I think that's the key too, is structuring the conversation in a way where it's not that you're trying to necessarily induce people to come down to shoot here, right? Because the locations are very limited. So
Right.
people are terrified of like, well, wait a minute, I can't shoot my whole movie there, right? So I think if we can, I want to talk to you more about this offline too.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, I want to talk to you more about this offline.
That's where you guys are. The two
Yeah.
conversations you're having right now doesn't affect most people here because you're talking
Yeah.
about funding huge movies. All right.
Exactly.
To take it back a little
Or
bit-
smaller.
Well,
Yeah.
to a degree,
Yeah.
but let's talk about. You both talked about where you started, right?
Yep.
So Badir and I co-directed The Devil You Know 2 years ago. Badir's helped with Self-Prescribed. She's coming later. I've done some short films. We're looking at the beginning of our careers, and we're looking at making a feature film. We can't necessarily go to New York or LA, and the way that structure flowchart you put up there is awesome, right? Yep.
But quite often, how do you attach talent to something that's going to be $500,000? Because they're not going to attach it unless you got proof of funds, generally is what I've been told. So you can't attach talent until you get the money.
Now, $500,000 in your world is a drop in the ocean. It's small to a degree. So Badir was there a second ago. Let's say Badir and I wanted to make a movie in the Cayman Islands. We need $500,000. How do we go about that? Like,
First of all, I wouldn't make one. I wouldn't make if it were me. I wouldn't make one movie for 500,000. I would make 5 for 100,000, so that your risk is spread.
I get that, but if you
Yeah.
you say that, right?
But
But
it's your risk too.
but then
sweat equity.
So but taking it back a step, look at Colin Trevorrow, right? His first movie is Safety Not Guaranteed. He makes it for $750,000, and it gets. Well, we're talking about independent movies, right? We're talking about a much smaller scale. Sundance is on at the moment. Yes, some of those are $1 million movies, of course, but small scale. You're right. Making 5 movies at $100,000 gets you the experience,
The
right?
experience mainly, yeah.
Right, but as you've just pointed out, the life cycle of a movie is brutal. It can take a couple of years, right? So 5 movies. Yeah.
So a couple thoughts to this. So I mentioned who our international sales agent is at Virgin, right? They don't necessarily work with small independent filmmakers. However, there are companies that do, right? There's a company called I Am Global that does.
Yeah, I've heard of
Okay,
them.
you've
Yeah.
heard of I Am
Yeah.
Global, right? You've heard of them. There's a company called Hyde Park, right? So there's small companies that are sales agents. You can take your finished script to these sales agents and say, what's the market viability for this script, right? They can give you an endorsement basically going off comps, right? Saying, okay, it's a psychological thriller, it's set in England, it's a period piece, right? And then they can figure out what the comps are. Or maybe it's not a period piece or whatever it might be. But they run it through comps and they do an analysis. Then what they can do is they can determine what the international pre-sales could be for that movie. Whether you're a well-known producer or not, they still will do this. And you don't have to pay them to do it. Because at the end of the day, they're sales agents. If they feel like it's viable, they're going to want to sell it, right? So they want it to be viable because the more product they have, the better. Then those smaller independent sales agents, they don't go off to Cannes really, and they don't go to Berlin. They go to AFM, the American Film Market in LA, which is for small independent films. It's everything from your mom's like home movie to a porn, right? It's just like the whole gamut, right? It's everything. But and those are all movies that are $10 million budgets to probably no more than I would say $4 or $5 million, right? That's a market that you can focus on as a filmmaker who maybe isn't in the Hollywood big movie thing
Well,
yet, right?
that's the thing. Like the thing is about financing Cayman. I mean, for a lot of us here, I'm looking around. It'd be great. How do we actually make film? I know we're a small island, but we have some beautiful locations. So how do we actually bring movies to Cayman? Because I think that's one of the big questions. How do we get movies here? How do we get you guys to go, you know what? We have a script. We can make it in Cayman. How do we bring, because that's what will enthuse the island. That's what will make young people here get involved. Well, that's it, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah.
Maybe waivers on film permits, not just a special economic zone, but some
Yeah.
type of structure whereby a film
Yeah, there's no.
come down here with everyone above the line and not have to pay some ridiculous work permit.
Yep. It's also about education. There's a conference every year for locations, right? So every single territory has a booth at this, like a trade show, promoting their territory. So Cayman needs to be at that. And these are all things that the Film Commission's working on, as Badir will educate you a little bit more on. But you're right? So it's about luring people down here to shoot. I know a lot of like HGTV and Discovery and a lot of TV stuff, but in terms of film, even if you can get 1, 3, 4, 5, whatever shots down here, scenes shot down here, that's great. It's great for the country. But tax incentives are going to be important, right? Not tax incentives, but rebates.
Yeah, but that's years away. You know the way it works here. That's
Possibly not. Cool. Thanks, guys, for having us.